Hey YouTubers, and welcome back to my YouTube channel Master That English, where we understand, analyze and interpret the important texts and concepts that may be part of your English curriculum. Our topic for today will take us to Canada. And the text that we are going to analyze is a play written by the Canadian writer George Ryga, and the play is The Ecstasy of Rita Joe. So get your pens and notepads ready because here we go. When we talk about the history of Canadian literature began with the rich oral tradition of Indigenous people, such as the First Nation, Inuit and Métis. They shared stories, myths, legends, songs, poems, and prayers, often connected to nature and spirituality. During the colonial period, European settlers wrote diaries and travel accounts about their struggles and experiences in a new land. After Canadian Confederation, writers started to develop a national identity, often inspired by nature. In the 20th century, writers like Lucy Maud and Stephen Leacock became popular. And after World War II, literature focused more on identity and cultural conflicts. Modern Canadian literature, with writers like Margaret Atwood and Alice Munro, is diverse and multicultural and deals with themes like identity, gender, and Indigenous experiences. Now, the first thing that we need to ask is who wrote the play, when, and why? Malcolm Black, the artistic director of Vancouver Playhouse, came across a short paragraph in the year 1966 Vancouver newspaper about the murder of an Indian girl whose body was found in a rooming house in the slum area of the city. Then Black had approached the Ukrainian-Canadian writer George Ryga to write a play based on the news clip that culminated in the making of The Ecstasy of Rita Joe. George Ryga belongs to the modern period of Canadian literature, post-World War II, especially the 1960s, a time when writers began focusing on real social issues rather than just nature or national identity. His play, The Ecstasy of Rita Joe, marks a turning point in Canadian drama. Through this work, Ryga brought attention to the struggles of Indigenous people in urban Canada, particularly issues like racism, poverty, cultural displacement, and injustice. Where earlier Canadian writers focused on survival, nature, and identity, Ryga represents a shift towards social realism and political awareness. He helped give voice to the marginalized communities, especially Indigenous people. The Ecstasy of Rita Joe was written and first produced during Canada's centennial. This play plays a vital role in the development of Canadian theatre as well as its writer. It was the first time a playwright used Vancouver Playhouse, a theatre mainly attended by comfortable middle-class people, to show them the harsh reality of poverty, which was actually very close to them. It made them face a reality they usually ignored, even though it existed just blocks away. Ryga pointed a finger accusing that audience. The play focuses on the white man's denial of the Indian's humanity. As even the white man's art and literature projected the Indian's distorted image as an exotic, happy, or unhappy savage. In short, George Ryga is a key figure in modern Canadian literature, known for introducing serious social criticism and Indigenous issues into Canadian drama, making literature more realistic and socially engaging. According to the chief Dan George Butard, tribe British Columbia in the year 1970, this is what he said: Rita Joe helps them to listen with their hearts. And when hearts are open, ears can hear. Who were the people George Ryga wanted to draw attention to and why? In modern Canadian literature, especially in the works of George Ryga, the term marginalized refers to groups of people who were pushed to the edges of society and denied equal rights and representation. The most significant among these were the Indigenous communities, including the First Nation, Inuit, and Métis. These groups suffered due to colonization, loss of land, cultural suppression, and discriminatory government policies, which left them socially and economically disadvantaged. Women, particularly Indigenous women, were even more vulnerable as they experienced both racial and gender discrimination. Ryga highlights how such individuals are trapped in a system that offers them little support and often treats them with injustice and neglect. These marginalized groups required a voice because they were largely ignored and misrepresented in earlier Canadian literature, which focused mainly on white settlers and national development. Their struggles, identities, and experiences were not given importance, leading to lack of awareness and understanding in mainstream society. Literature became a powerful medium through which their realities could be expressed and acknowledged. By giving voice to the marginalized, writers like Ryga aim to expose social inequalities, challenge the conscience of society. Their work sought not only to represent the suffering of these communities, but also demand justice and change. Thus, the inclusion of marginalized voices marked an important shift in Canadian literature towards social responsibility, realism, and inclusivity. Let us now understand the structure of the play. The play is non-linear. That means it will not follow a chronological order as most plays do. It moves between the courtroom scene that highlights Rita Joe's present to the past memories that are represented as flashbacks and symbolic dreamlike moments. People who are associated with Rita Joe during the course of her lifetime are the characters who come off and off the stage during the present in the courtroom trial, giving glimpses of her life while justifying her as a victim of circumstance. These characters appear in both past and present to show Rita's past is always present in her life, as she is trapped between two worlds. Her life in the reserve, that is the past, and her life in the city, which is the present. The system that shaped her includes the family, religion, education, continue to influence her fate. Let us understand this play based on the number of acts it has. The play can be divided into 2 acts. Let us first understand the chronological order of appearance in Act 1. In Act 1, the first person to appear is the magistrate, who appears in the courtroom highlighting the present scenario. He begins the Rita's trial, and you won't be surprised that the first thing that he says is, "Can she speak English?" When Rita Joe is brought before the court, her story unfolds from here. Jamie Paul is the first character from her past that appears in flashback in the court scene in Act 1. But the question is, why Jamie Paul? Why is he the first person to appear? Jamie Paul represents the romanticized gaze of the city life that made Rita Joe leave the sanctuary of her reserve to live a better life, whether it is on the financial front or the job opportunities that will enhance their standard of living. But right after the flashback, the light ironically falls on Rita Joe, who instead of praising the city in the courtroom complains about her ill fate that has brought her to the courtroom, where the beautiful scenes of nature that were told to her about the city, that were described to her about the city, have now been replaced by the stink in the prison. And laurels and achievements have reduced to allegations in the city life, making her a victim. Initially, we can sense her confusion and distrust for the people in the city, who accuse her wrongly, and that gets her into trouble. The magistrate is an important character who highlights the true predicament of the migrants, as he says that migrants come in thousands in the city in search of opportunities. He also recognizes the face of Rita Joe as a reminder of the past acquaintance, whom he had seen in an unsuitable living condition, highlighting the intensity of poverty the natives had to bear while adjusting to the urban life. He also considers them irresponsible, not capable of parenting with sincerity due to their vagabond lifestyle. On the other hand, he considers institutions and people with financial security capable of raising responsible children than the Aborigines, as the people in the city can contribute to the development of the nation. During her conversation with the magistrate, we are given an insight about the circumstances Rita had experienced in the city. Once, while working in a tire shop, she found herself to be the only person present in the team of works. She found the situation to be ridiculous, as she has no significant role to play as a woman, but answer queries about other workers. This exploitation had to be tolerated by her as an Indigenous woman. All such melancholic experiences of the present are juxtaposed with the false promotions from people like Jamie, who told her that the city life would be colorful. She is also reminded of the line that was spoken by Clara Hill, her acquaintance. If you're real happy, the clouds make you forget you're not home. This is the reason when the truth is revealed to Rita, she says that, I remember colors, but I've forgot faces already, implying she has experienced the reality in its true form, but the promises no longer hold any meaning in her life. When the magistrate asks for witnesses in the first trial, she can only refer to Jamie and her sister, Eileen Joe. Eileen Joe is her sister who has left for the reserve. Her sister represents the failed efforts of the natives to survive with their talent in the city, as she is unable to earn a revenue with her dressmaking skills and is forced to leave the city and return to her roots to follow native pursuits such as fishing and cut pulpwood. Later, Eileen Joe appears in the childhood scenes where she is playing and picking berries. She is a symbol of innocence and happiness. She appears in memories or dreamlike scenes and reminds Rita of what she has lost. She represents nostalgia and lost innocence. She is also symbolic of the talent that goes unnoticed in native women, as Eileen has an exceptional talent in making clothes, as the blouse that she has made for Rita never ripped till a year, unlike the commercial garments that lacked strength and good craftsmanship in the city. Thereafter, the characters from the past appear in the form of priest, teacher, who are a reflection of her past. Father Andrew was the priest on the reserve, guiding Indigenous people. He had advised Rita about her move to the city and had warned her that the city was capable of taking away your identity that connects you to your roots. The advice of the priest is juxtaposed with another character from the past, which is Jamie, who says that It was possible to secure your future in the city only through good jobs, especially government jobs. The next character to address the audience directly is Mr. Homer, a well-meaning white character who tries to help indigenous people, including Rita Joe. His intention comes from the sense of sympathy and moral responsibility. He believes that the natives need guidance to adjust to city life and to fit into mainstream society. However, his help is limited and somewhat misguided. He assumes that indigenous people, rather than questioning the unfair system, must change themselves to match the white society. Instead of empowering them or addressing deeper issues like racism and poverty, his efforts remain superficial and controlled. Through Mr. Homer, Ryga is showing how authoritative figures misinterpret marginalized people's behavior by turning their own prejudice into reasonable fear, by using the fear to justify the harsh and unfair treatment. As Mr. Homer is not just explaining what happened, he is rationalizing his behavior within a system that already marginalizes people like Rita Joe. In this way, Mr. Homer disguises prejudice as fear and uses it to justify his action against a vulnerable, marginalized woman. This is how the society fails to support Rita Joe's claims and projects her as irresponsible, even incapable of doing justice as a mother, even though she has no children. These allegations agitate her, forcing her to smoke in order to relieve her stress. Whenever she is at the court hearing, she is always feeling hungry and sleepy and seems to be in a disoriented state of mind, pleading for respite and the desire to go home as she is unable to escape this torture. This prejudice of the present carries her to the past. Soon after, Mr. Homer, the scene shifts to the unfair treatment being imposed to Jamie Paul in the city. This brief scene gradually removes the romanticized notions of the natives for the city life and make them realize that as their sheer birth as natives is the biggest stigma that they have to deal with in the city.
You know me. You think that I'm a dirty Indian? Huh? Get out of my way.
Thereafter, George Ryga, as a writer, asks the reader a very important question through the next character. In spite of experiencing an endless torture in the city, why does Rita Joe not settle back in the reserve like many others? To throw light on this aspect, Ryga introduces the next character through flashback, that is, Miss Donahue, the teacher. This scene runs parallel to the next trial hearing where Rita Joe has now been charged with bigger allegations, that is, prostitution. When accused of prostitution, she insists the policeman lied and forced $5 into her pocket, showing how the police treat Rita as a problem to control, not a person. They are quick to arrest, not to help. In the scene, through Miss Donahue, the teacher, George Ryga discusses the concept of the melting pot. The melting pot means forcing indigenous people to give up their culture and become like the dominant society. Miss Donahue talks about it during the courtroom scene while discussing Rita's schooling. She does so to justify the education system. But the playwright uses it to show this idea is harmful and is one of the reasons for Rita's tragic life, as she was unable to give up her tradition and become like white urban Canadians. The teacher believes Rita is coming from nowhere, because her indigenous background is seen as worthless. She also assumes that she has no future, going no place. Instead of encouraging Rita, the teacher gives up on her in advance.
You will never make bronze.
Shows she has no faith in her ability. It reflects a system where even educators reinforce inequality by lowering expectations and accepting social injustice as unchangeable. The same system asks her to attend school via correspondence after grade 5. Unfortunately, the information does not reach her as the information is withheld from her by Mahoney. This is an example of everyday racism. As Indigenous people are treated as unimportant or invisible, and even basic rights like receiving mail are denied to them. Mahoney is not even a big authority figure. He just controls something important like handling mails and store access. He uses the small power to oppress the marginalized. Ryga shows that injustice exists at every level of society, not just courts or police. In this way, prejudice starts early for Rita, when she is still a child, showing that racism is not based on Rita's actions, not her ability, but on who she is. The teacher is seen labeling and stereotyping her. So her failure is not natural. It is imposed by society. We also hear Jamie's confession that in spite of his best efforts, he is not even recognized by his name, as he was always referred to as,
"Hey fella, you boy?"
In contrast, the natives value their children and are not even ready to sell them. As Rita Joe's father was not willing to part with his daughter, Rita, even for $1,000 that were offered by Sandy Collins, who ran the sawmill in the reserve in the olden days. This is a sharp contrast to the present scenario, where people continue throwing charges at and even consider her capable of carrying diseases in the city. This is why the magistrate humiliates her at every point.
Have you any balls on your back? Any discharge? When did you bathe last?
In this way, the magistrate strips her of individuality and humanity. The questions assume that she is dirty and diseased. This reflects a stereotype about Indigenous people being unclean or inferior. As his thinking is shaped by racist assumptions, not facts, he's judging her character and linking poverty with moral and physical corruption. The setting of the courtroom makes it worse as Rita cannot defend herself freely. These personal questions are meant to embarrass and shame her and reinforce the magistrate's authority. This legal system doesn't just punish Rita, it humiliates her and stereotypes her, reflecting a broader system that devalues marginalized people. Let us now analyze Act 2 based on the chronological order of appearance. In Act 2, we again see the magistrate opening the act in the courtroom and continue his judgment of Rita. When Rita Joe returns to court, her situation worsens because this time Rita's life gets worse. She loses hope, identity, and stability. She faces more arrests and more rejection and more isolation, and even expresses this discontent even to the priest by referring to the exploitation of her ancestors in the past, who were fooled just like her, as her ancestors also lost their right to their own land over false promises made by the colonizer while adopting his culture and identity.
They talked for 100 years and the white man had our land.
The magistrate has accepted her as a lawbreaker and justifies punishing her as he avoids understanding her situation, showing rigidity and lack of compassion. He believes that she is at fault and ignores her difficult background. This is reflective of blind, unfair justice system. Jamie appears in the deteriorating condition and reflects shared downfall. He represents lost personal connections and dark humor about the job in the city. The policemen continue with the harassment and control. Mr. Homer appears and shows limits of help. Father Andrew continues his religious presence. He tries to force a confession from Rita Joe. He represents a failed attempt at moral authority. David Joe appears again searching for Rita. Eileen Joe appears in vision scenes. The murderers appear near the end kill Rita and Jamie, resulting in a tragic climax. Rita is raped and murdered. Implied, not shown directly. Her body is discovered. Her voice was never heard, says the narrative voice at the end of the play to the audience to emphasize Rita's tragic silence and how society ignored her completely. Her death represents the destruction and silencing of Indigenous identity, the marginalized people and society's complete failure. Hence, when Rita moves to the city, she is displaced from nature, as the city is artificial, cold, hard as cement. Here, cement symbolizes a world unnatural and hostile to her identity. The hurt is not just physical. It represents discomfort in a foreign culture and loss of belonging, as she cannot fit into the urban lifestyle. It contrasts with warmth, community, and tradition of her past as the city hurts her in every way, whether it is physical, emotional, or social. This is why, by the end of this play, the lines spoken by Eileen about Rita Joe are,
When Rita Joe first come to the city, she told me the cement made her feet hurt.
reflects her inability to fit into the system. By the end of this play, we should think, why is this play constantly gravitating between present and past in the court? Rita constantly moves between the present, that is the courtroom scenes, to the past, that her memories, because the play is structured to show that her current situation cannot be understood without her history. Firstly, these shifts reveal how her past shapes her present. Rita's memories of life on the reserve, her relationships, her early struggles explain why she came to the city in the first place and how she gradually fell into difficult circumstances. The court only sees her as a criminal, but the audience sees the human story behind the charges. Secondly, the movement between past and present highlight the failure of the justice system. The magistrate focuses only on facts and accusations, ignoring the social and personal causes of Rita Joe's condition. By contrast, the flashback exposed the injustice, exploitation, and discrimination she has faced, showing that she is more a victim than a criminal. Thirdly, this technique reflects Rita's mental and emotional state. She is confused, traumatized, and overwhelmed. So her thoughts naturally move back to earlier experiences. Her past becomes a way to make sense of her suffering and to hold on to her identity. In short, Rita's shifting between past and present helps the audience understand her life is not just a series of crimes, but a tragic journey shaped by society, memory, and injustice. The word ecstasy is used ironically for Rita, as the law punishes Rita instead of helping her. She is caught between her indigenous culture and modern life and suffers a loss of identity. As authorities fail to understand or support her, eventually she belongs neither to the city nor to the reserve and gets salvation only with death. And as a soul attains peace and respite from all the worldly problems, so it is truly her ecstasy. Let us think about the final question. Have the condition for the indigenous people improved since the play was written by George Ryga? Yes. Conditions for indigenous people in Canada have improved. This play was written in the year 1967, which was a time when the picture was mixed and not fully resolved. Today, the indigenous community have an identity. Government and society openly acknowledge past injustices, such as the residential school systems. Efforts like the Truth and Reconciliation process have tried to address the historical wrongs. Indigenous voices are now stronger in literature, politics, and media. There are more opportunities for education, cultural preservation than that were there in Rita Joe's time. Conditions have improved in awareness, rights, and representation. But true equality and justice are still at work and in progress, which keeps the play relevant even today. When I read a play from a different country, I'm always reminded of texts that were written in the similar timeline. One text from my country that I'm reminded of is the text written by the novelist Mulk Raj Anand titled Untouchable, which also addresses about the marginalized condition that were being faced by the caste system that we had, where the lowest caste were considered as people who were often graded as untouchables. These people were also living in marginalized conditions. They were not given rights, privileges. They were confined to menial chores. They were not given jobs and opportunities. But today the story is different because writers like Mulk Raj Anand and George Ryga have chronicled those injustices through their works. And this is how it makes a change for the better today. This is how history does not repeat itself, because the writers that we read remind us of the wrongs that were being experienced in the past. It helps us to make the world a better place. And this is how every text in the past that speaks about injustice is an important documentation and reminder that it should not repeat itself in the future. And that brings us to the end of this lecture. I hope this beautiful play definitely did make a refreshing understanding for you based on the timeline when it was written, and hope you enjoyed the complete analysis. If you like it, please do share it with people who you feel can also benefit from it, and stay tuned for more. This is me, Karishma. Until we meet next time, take care.